So it comes time when you're kind of, not leaving the industry, quote unquote, but you're going from this kind of like, I call it from chef to founder. And I think that there's a lot of similarities there from like taking responsibility and being a leader, but I don't think enough chefs pause in their careers to acknowledge that there are like cooking skills and then there are entrepreneurship skills. And the entrepreneurship skills don't get taught always in the way in kitchens of like, here's a recipe, you're going to stand over my shoulder and watch this stuff. It's almost, I would experience it where like you can't be in the finance meetings, HR happens just with these two people, and so you end up having a lot of these notebooks with great ideas and you know how to make sauces and you know how to butcher, but then it's like you go on to start opening your own thing and you're like, oh my God, there's a gap here. Did you experience that gap?
Oh my gosh, 100%. You're totally right. I think they're diametrically opposed. The skill set of being a chef and being an entrepreneur. Now, there's a lot of parallels, and I've seen more and more over the years. The idea that if you don't love it, you're just not going to succeed because being an entrepreneur is just freaking hard. So is being a chef. Technique is so important, and the same thing is true. And as to be an entrepreneur, you have to understand your craft and your domain. But there's such a different skill set. I think the biggest skill set, or not even skill set, but the mindset shift from being a chef to being a restaurant owner is your metric of success is not how well you cook a piece of meat, but how well can you deploy a team to do that consistently every day and make it profitable and have people coming in the door that love it, right? Which is different. Like I can cook a chicken with my eyes closed and make it perfect every time. But who cares if my cook can't do it, right? And if they're not happy doing it.
Totally. So you acknowledge that gap. Were you the type of person that just kind of like tried to find a school that had like some online courses on entrepreneurship? Did you dive into books? Did you have a mentor that you could call? Like, how did you start to bridge that gap? What resources were helpful for you?
Yeah. So it was mostly books, and I would say it's a little bit different when I opened restaurants as opposed to when I started my new company, which is a technology company. Because opening restaurants, it was tough because when I opened up Bark, I had a few restaurants called Bark in New York, and I went from being in the fine dining world to opening restaurants in the sort of fast casual, almost like QSR space. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about that because it didn't exist back then. Now it's somewhat common, but back then nobody did that. And most of the chefs that I worked for, like Floyd Kaidos, I remember being upset. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you opening a fast casual restaurant? And so I didn't really have a lot of guidance. Gray Kuntz was very helpful to me just as a mentor. And by the way, so was Floyd in general. And there's a lot of lessons as a chef that you learn along the way that translate really well. So I tried to sort of like culminate all of those into the business skills, but a lot of it is just really learning as you go, and you kind of have to. There are some incredible books that I would recommend for entrepreneurship, but there's no real substitute for just getting in and doing it.
I mean, my audience would completely annihilate me if I didn't ask for some of those. It is part of a rapid fire question later on in the show, but if you have books that come to mind, because this is a voracious reading kind of audience. Like anything you recommend, people will kind of pick and choose what suits their needs for now.
I mean, I have a ton. I think it depends on the vantage of what you're trying to do as it relates to the restaurants specifically. There's not a lot of books that I read about how to run a great restaurant. I mean, I think Setting the Table by Danny Meyer is great, but most of the books that I've read that really stick with me are books that maybe have been relegated more to the sort of technology world, but definitely apply to starting a restaurant business.
I'm the same. I'm trying to pull up some books that I like. I have Rework, Lean Startup, there's another business model book underneath there. So the funny thing about restaurant folks is that when it's book time, publishers usually want to kind of I would feel nudge you more towards share your recipes, share your philosophy on food. And, I've had guests that come on the show that's chefs don't share their business models enough. And so I think that I did the same thing. I would look to Silicon Valley people who, are bloggers who are writing about how business structure ends up working, and any of the little things that you need to kind of be, have top of mind with marketing and sales. there's other people who are incentivized to put their ideas out there about those topics. And so it's almost like you have to kind of like go off the map, gather these resources and bring them back to whatever you're doing. And so, yeah, like I no expectation to share like, oh, what chef restaurant book ended up helping you? Because like genuinely, I recommend these books all the time because the quality of the information translates regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ones you mentioned are great. I think E-Myth is a great one. I love
So
Crossing
good.
the Chasm. High Output Management by Andy Grove is an incredible one. Play Bigger. I mean, there's a ton. I would probably like the Mythical Man Month is a great one. That's really more. It's funny because it's like a technology book, but it really helps you understand how to build an entire organization. And I think that there's a couple that like seem like very like why would you associate that with business? But there's one book called Fooled by Randomness that I really liked. It just helped me to sort of understand just thought process and how to think differently. One of my favorite books is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I know there's some controversy around him, but his sort of approach to competition, I think is brilliant. So I read that one a lot. By the way, I also read Siddhartha like once a year because it's just such a great sort of way to think about like the simplicity of what really matters and how much you can do if you just can control kind of like your mind. So that one I recommend to everybody, for sure.
Huge.